In conceiving of God, the choice before a pantheist lies between alternatives from which no genius has as yet devised a real escape. God, the pantheist must assert, is literally everything. God is the whole material and spiritual universe. He is humanity in all its manifestations. He is, by inclusion, every moral and immoral agent, and every form and exaggeration of moral evil, no less than every variety of moral excellence and beauty, is part of the all-pervading, all-comprehending movement of his universal life. If this revolting blasphemy be declined, then the God of pantheism must be the barest abstraction of abstract being. He must, as with the Alexandrian thinkers, be so exaggerated an abstraction as to transcend existence itself. He must be conceived of as utterly unreal, lifeless, non-existent, while the only real beings are those finite and determinate forms of existence whereof nature is composed. This dilemma haunts all the historical transformations of pantheism in Europe as in the East, today as 2,000 years ago. Pantheism must either assert that its God is the one only existing being whose existence absorbs and is identified with the universe and humanity, or else it must admit that he is the rarest and most unreal of conceivable abstractions, in plain terms, that he is no being at all. And the question before us is, does the incarnation of God, as taught by the Christian doctrine, expose Christian thought to this dilemma? Is God brought very nigh to us, Christians, in such sort as to bury the eternal in the temporary, the infinite in the finite, the absolute and self-existent in the transient and the relative, the all-holy in the very sink of moral evil, unless, in order to save his honour in our thought, we are prepared to attenuate our idea of him into nonentity? Now, not merely is there no ground for this apprehension, but the Christian doctrine of an incarnate God is our most solid protection against the inroads of pantheistic error. The strength of pantheistic systems lies in that craving both of the intellect and of the heart for union with the absolute being, which is the most legitimate and the noblest instinct of our nature. This craving is satisfied by the Christian's union with the incarnate Son. But while satisfying it, the incarnation raises an effective barrier against its abuse after the fashion of pantheism. Against the dogma of an incarnate God rooted in the faith of a Christian people, the waves of pantheistic thought may surge and lash themselves and break in vain. For the incarnation presupposes that master truth which pantheism most passionately denies. It presupposes the truth that between the finite and the infinite, between the Creator and the cosmos, between God and man, there is of necessity a measureless abyss. On this point, its opposition to pantheism is as earnest as that of the most jealous deism. But the Christian creed escapes from the deistic conception of an omnipotent moral being, surveying intelligently the vast accumulation of sin and misery which we see on this earth, yet withal remaining unmoved, inactive, indifferent. The Christian creed spans this gulf which yawns between earth and heaven, by proclaiming that the everlasting Son has taken our nature upon him. In his person, a created nature is joined to the uncreated by a union which is forever indissoluble. But what is that truth which underlies this transcendent mystery? What sustains it? What even enhances it? What forbids it to melt away in our thought into a chaotic confusion out of which neither the divine nor the human could struggle forth into the light for distinct recognition? It is, I reply, the truth that the natures thus united in the person of Jesus are radically, by their essence and forever, distinct. It is by reason of this ineffaceable distinctness that the union of the Godhead and manhood in Jesus is such an object of wondering and thankful contemplation to Christians. Accordingly, at the very heart of the creed of Christendom, we have a guarantee against the cardinal error of pantheism. While yet by our living fellowship as Christians with the divine and incarnate Son, we realize the aspiration which pantheism both fosters and perverts. Christian intellect, so long as it is Christian, can never be betrayed into the admission that God is the universe. Christian faith can never be reduced to the extremity of choosing between a denial of moral distinctions and an assertion that God is the parent of all immoral action, or to the desperate endeavour to escape this alternative by volatilizing God into non-existence. And yet Christian love, while it is really Christian, cannot for one moment doubt that it enfolds and possesses and is united to its divine object. But this intellectual safeguard and this moral satisfaction alike vanish if the real deity of Jesus be denied or obscured. Since it is the deity of our truly human Lord which satisfies the Christian heart, while it protects the Christian intellect against fatal aberrations. Certainly, a deism which would satisfy the heart inevitably becomes pantheistic in its awkward attempts to become devotional. And although pantheism should everywhere breathe the tenderness which almost blinds a reader of Spinoza's Ethics to a perception of their real character, still pantheism is at bottom and in its results not other than a graceful atheism. But to partake of the divine nature incarnate in Christ is not to bury God in the filth of moral pollution, nor is it to transcendentalize him into an abstraction which mocks us when we attempt to grasp it as an unsubstantial phantom. Monsieur Renan's frequent mention of God in his Vie de Jésus does not imply that he believes in a supreme being. God means with Monsieur Renan only the category of the ideal and not any existing personal being whatever. To quote from Questions contemporaines, les sciences historiques ne diffèrent en rien par la méthode des sciences physiques et mathématiques. Elles supposent qu'aucun agent surnaturel ne vient troubler la marche de l'humanité, que cette marche est la résultante immédiate de la liberté qui est dans l'homme et de la fatalité qui est dans la nature, qu'il n'y a pas d'être libre supérieur à l'homme auquel on puisse attribuer une part appréciable dans la conduite morale, non plus que dans la conduite matérielle de l'univers. One more sample shall be given of this protective efficacy of the doctrine of Christ's divinity. if it guards in our thought the honour, the majesty, the life of God, it also protects the true dignity and the rights of man. The unsettled spirit of our time, when it has broken with the claims of faith, oscillates, whether from caprice or in bewilderment, between the most inconsistent errors. If at one while its audacity would drive the great God from his throne in heaven to make way for the lawless intellect and will of his creature, at another it seems possessed by an infatuated passion for the degradation of mankind. It either ignores such features of the higher side of our complex being as are the powers of reflection and of inference, or it arbitrarily assumes that they are only the products of civilization. It fixes its attention exclusively upon the graduated variety of form perceptible in a long series of crania which it has arranged in its museums, and then it proclaims with enthusiasm that a Newton or a Herschel is, after all, only the cultivated descendant of a grotesque and irrational ape. It even denies to man the possession of any spiritual nature whatever. Thought is asserted to be inherent in the substance of the brain. Belief in the existence of an immaterial essence is treated as an unscientific and superstitious prejudice. Virtuous and vicious actions are alluded to as alike results of purely physical agencies, as M. Taine in Histoire de la littérature anglaise. Le vice et la vertu sont des produits comme le sucre et le vitriol. Man is to all intents and purposes a soulless brute. My brethren, you will not suppose that I am desiring to derogate, however indirectly, from the claims of that noble science which patiently investigates the physiology of our animal nature. I am only protesting against a rash and insulting hypothesis, for which science, if her sons could speak with one voice, would be loath to make herself responsible, since by it her true utterances are piteously caricatured. It cannot be said that such a theory is a harmless eccentricity of over-eager speculation, for it destroys that high and legitimate estimate of God's natural gifts to man, which is an important element of earnest and healthy morality in the individual, and which is still more essential to the onward march of our social progress. But so long as the Christian Church believes in the true divinity of our incarnate Lord, it is not probable that theories which deny the higher aspects of human nature will meet with large acceptance. We Christians can bear to be told that the skull of this or that section of the human family bears this or that degree of resemblance to the skull of a gorilla. We know indeed that, as receivers of the gift of life, we are simply on a level with the lowest of the lower creatures. We owe all that we are and have to God. Do we not thank Him for our creation, preservation, and all the blessings of this life? Might He not have given us less than we have? Might He not have given us nothing? What have we, what are we, that we have not received? The question of man's place in the universe touches not any self-achieved dignity of our own, but the extent and the nature of the divine bounty. But while we believe the creed of Christendom, we cannot view such a question as open, or listen with any other feelings than those of sorrow and repugnance to the arguments of the apostles of human degradation. We cannot consent to suppose ourselves to be mere animal organisms, without any immaterial soul or future destiny, parted by no distinctive attribute from the perishing beasts around us. For the true nobility of our nature has received the seal of a recognition which forbids our intellectual complicity with the physics or the psychology of materialism. Do not we Christians call to mind often, every day of our lives, that God has put such high and distinctive honour upon our common humanity as to clothe himself in it, and to bear it to heaven in its glorious and unsullied perfection, that for all eternity it may be the partner of his throne. Tremunt videntes angeli, versam vicem mortalium, peccat caro, mundat caro, regnat Deus Dei caro. But this exaltation of our human nature would be the wildest dream unless Jesus were truly God as well as man. His divinity is the warrant that in him our race is crowned with glory and honour, and that in taking upon him not the nature of angels, but the seed of Abraham, he was vindicating our individual capacity for the highest greatness. Apart from the phenomena of reflection and reason, the hopes which are raised by the Incarnation utterly forbid speculations that would degrade man to the level of a brute, incapable of any real morality. If we are told that such hopes are not direct replies to the arguments of physiology, we answer that physiology can and does often correct by her scientific demonstrations the eccentricities of those who would force her to take part against man's best hopes and instincts. But as a practical matter of fact, Christendom maintains its faith in the dignity of man amidst the creatures of God by its faith in the incarnation of the divine Son. Beloved, now are we the sons of God, and it doth not yet appear what we shall be, but we know that when he shall appear, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is.